Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Big Game Indicating Dogs Live QnA from the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle. The Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle is a closed and private Facebook group for people who have subscribed and are following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. And the Deer Dog Training Blueprint is a 12-part, month-by-month, 15-hour video course with everything you need to train your own deer dog or your own big game indicating dog. If you want to find out more about the Deer Dog Training Blueprint and big game indicating dogs in general, jump on and follow Big Game Indicating Dogs on Facebook and Instagram. We're also on YouTube, and you can also go to biggameindicatingdogs.com. Find out more there. Right. I barely know where to start with this one, but it's cool because we've got tons of stuff to get through. There's loads of questions in here on the Inner Circle. Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle is well up and running now. We're getting lots of posts and questions, and it's really cool because all of you guys in the Inner Circle that have been following the blueprint for longer than others and have actually fully trained dogs, and some people are now sort of working on training their second dog. Oh man, I forgot to press record over here. We're streaming live, but now we're recording as well. You guys that have been following the blueprint for a while are now answering a lot of questions for guys and girls, actually on both sides, guys and girls that are just starting on the blueprint and guys and girls that have been following it for a long time. And now, if I say guys, I mean everyone. It's not like I'm not assuming your sex. I'm saying hi guys as in everyone. I maybe should change that, but it's too much of a habit. All the people that are following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint and are now doing an awesome job of helping the new ones along in the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle. And again, the Inner Circle is just like it's an add-on to the blueprint. Everyone that buys a blueprint or subscribes to it gets access to the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle, and it's a closed private Facebook group where this is what it's all about. It's all about follow-up support and everyone helping each other to train their dogs. And I'm just looking at a question right now. Paul Herman asked a question about why in the blueprint do we keep our pups from being social with other dogs, humans? Because my boy's very friendly. I find it difficult to stop him from saying hello to other dogs. And everyone's jumping in and answering the questions. There's like a dozen comments there. Good conversation answering that. Paul, we don't stop the dogs being social, like right in part 1, I show you how I introduce print to fly, like right at the start. And we're going a lot more into depth and a lot more of the stuff in the Palmico Dog Guide, but we do touch on it right at the start in part 1 because you're right, it is important. But particularly if you're training a big game indicating dog, a deer indicating dog, a stalking dog that you want to stay close and be super controlled and all of that, and even in training in general, a huge amount of massive problems come from people doing and using completely uncontrolled socialization. And there's some really good answers in there, and they're all bang on from all the other trainers in the Inner Circle there. And it basically gets covered. And then there's a couple of real classics. I think it was where did I see? Yeah, Jamie. She's saying, I got it's just noise while I watched while I watched his dog literally try and bite my pup. And that's just the classic example of it. I get it all the time too, across the road, on the beach, out walking the dog. I might be walking Miko or Print or Fly or and these other dogs, no control off leash at all, just coming flying in and aggression and attacking, and sometimes it's just playful. But the thing is that playful stuff leads to all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, it really does. I could talk about this one subject for 2 hours alone. But man, it's such an important part. Socialization is very important, but there's a huge, gigantic, monstrous over-emphasization on it in dog training in general. And everyone's like, you got to socialize the dog. You got to socialize it, socialize. And just like, that's the most important thing. And it just gets completely out of hand and out of control. And man, it just causes so many problems. It's ridiculous. And I've worked with loads of dogs that have been to puppy classes where they're massive on socialization, but it's out of control socialization, and you've seen how structured I was with Print in the blueprint. If you've watched the Pal Miko dog guide, you've seen how structured I have been with Miko, and my dogs are really, really, really good with other dogs, really well socialized. And see, now you're talking about the subjectivity of what a word means and etymology of words and things like that, because some people say, it's really important that your dog's well socialized. Okay, what does that mean? Is well socialized that your dog runs around like a idiot with loads of other dogs all the time? I don't actually think that's well socialized, because that is what can actually bring about loads of serious issues. And that out of control socialization is where you get one dog gets a little bit overwhelmed one day and it snaps and has a go at another dog, and the other dog has a go back. And now one of those two dogs, if not both, have this weird socialization issue where now one and it can go either way. That dog that snaps and then gets snapped at back, it can go, well, I'm going to just get in first next time. Or all of a sudden you've created conflict, and it can go either way. That a dog can either get aggressive through that, or it can get overly submissive through that. And then anytime a dog gets unbalanced in that respect, so if it gets overly aggressive and it's walking around all strutting its stuff and all stiff and high and mighty everywhere, then other dogs start reacting to it. And that dog that's already getting aggressive will start reacting to the reaction of the other dogs, and then they bounce backwards and forth between each other, and it's escalating situation, and it just all gets worse and worse. And then it also happens if the dog gets submissive through running into issues through out of control, quote unquote, socialization. Other dogs will react to an overly submissive dog too. And then the overly submissive dog reacts to the reaction of the other dog, and the other dog reacts to the reaction of the dog reacting to it. And again, you've got a bad cycle. And that's why I'm so massive on controlled socialization, because out of control socializing causes so many freaking issues. It's ridiculous. It's probably, if not definitely, one of the biggest issues in sort of mainstream and overall thought in dog training today. And so many, and what is well socialized? To me, well socialized is a dog that actually knows how to act around other dogs and has control around other dogs, as well as being able to play. Well socialized isn't a dog that just wants to go flying into all situations and just cause God knows what to happen. there you go. Sort of open with a bit of a bit of an opening rant there. We got quite a crew on today. What have we got? Man, I was about to start calling out names, but I don't think I'm even. Anton, Gwen, Roma, Christian, Josh, Sandy, Latham, Joe, Jody, Taryn, Paul, Catherine, Richard, Ian, Levi, Brenton, Brad, TJ, Jonathan, Keith, David, Al, Daniel, Jacob, Philip, Luke. How's it going? Okay, we've got a whole heap of comments on the post that I posted Monday, I think. Yeah, I said when I posted in the Inner Circle Live QnA Tuesday night, and I said, if you can't make it, ask your questions in the comments on this post. And then people can come back and watch it later, or they can listen to it on the podcast. That's another point. If people are watching this video and they're looking at it going, man, but it's like an hour and a half long and I've got to go do something right now, you can either come back and watch it, or you can also listen to the audio of these videos on the Paul Michaels Revolution podcast. Search the Paul Michaels Revolution on pretty much any podcast app, definitely all of the top ones, and we're there. And you can scroll down, look for the Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&As. They're all there. There's also loads of other stuff. Martin Hemmingson in the questions. He said he may not make the broadcast, but what's people's view on neutering over 6-month-old male? Not sure whether to or not. Martin, I've made a free video on that. I think it's about a 10 or 15 minute video. It's funny, I actually looked for it for someone else. Yeah, this is a question I answer so frequently that I actually made a video on it, and now instead of answering it in messages and stuff, I just send the link to that video. But I actually looked for it one time and I couldn't find it. It should be there on Facebook or YouTube, especially on Facebook and the Big Game Indicating Dogs public page. It's like, because it's like a 15-minute answer. But real short story, man. Well, here's actually probably one tip on it. I just neutered print, and I'm not concerned about it whatsoever, because it just doesn't have that. You'll have people say, "Oh, I hope he doesn't lose his drive, bro," and stuff like that. It's, look, maybe it could have an effect on some dogs. 95% of that stuff's bullshit. I've seen neutered dogs have so much drive. It's, and how much drive do you need in a big game indicating dog? Yeah, you want drive, but that's a massive subject in itself too. People get all out of shape about drive, and a dog, often what people recognize as drive is actually just hyperactivity, and what people recognize as a calm, quiet dog is actually a really calculated, thoughtful dog that will have lots of what I call drive in the field. But neutering, man, just do it. And my real short answer for my take on neutering, and again, I could look for that video. It should be there. If it's not there, I'm going to track it down and post it again. I don't know where it went. It should be there. There's no reason to definitely do it, and there's no reason to definitely not do it. It's all about, if you want to do it, do it. The reason I've just got print fixed is Miko's about to come on heat. Print's coming up 3 years old. Miko's about to come on heat. Print's gone through all his maturity thing. I think there is cases you can make for all sorts of stuff. You could say, wait until the dog's 9 months or a year old or something before you neuter it. Let it get a bit of maturity and let all its chemicals balance out, or whatever they have. There's no like rock solid science on it either. But then there's plenty of super healthy dogs out there doing really good stuff that were neutered really young. So if you're in a situation, Martin, and you've got a 6-month-old male, what's people's view on neutering it? A 6 months old, not sure whether to or not. If you haven't got a female dog that's going to come on heat at home, so there's no real reason for you to neuter it, other than like a vet's telling you to neuter it. And some vets, I think, get carried away. And this is what I said in one of the big topics that I talked about in the 15-minute video that I said it's out there somewhere. I've had vets say, "Oh, you really should get your dog neutered right at the start. You can eliminate loads of health problems, and these testicular cancer or." And I'm just throwing shit out there. I don't know if a vet's actually said that, but I've definitely had that. Like they're throwing all these big words around saying I really, really should do it. And it's like, most of that's bullshit. Yeah, there'll be a case somewhere and someone will comment somewhere on this that they could have saved their dog from some horrific thing if they had done it. But I'm telling you, I could go on about it forever, but there's no massive reason why you definitely should. And there's no massive reason why you definitely should not. It's all about, and that's a good thing. It's a positive, because it's like, if you don't want to, you don't have to. And it's probably not going to make much difference either way. If you want to, do it. And it probably won't make much difference either way. But that's where I stand on it. I've just got print done because Miko's about to have her first heat at 9 months old. I'm halfway through making the Pal Miko dog guide with her. I don't want her chopped up and laid up and all that stuff at the moment. I'm not really overly interested in breeding from print. He's a really nice dog, but there's also no insane standout things that I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get that again. I'm not into breeding at all. There's loads of really good breeders out there that are right into it, that breed really good dogs, so I don't have to be into it. If I want to get a pup, I always know I can find a good one. I don't want to have to get Miko spayed at the moment, but I know she's about to have her first heat, and if that happens while Prince still got his nuts in, I'm going to have 4 weeks of a massive pain in the ass of having to keep them all separated and stuff. So now Prince had the snip over a week ago now. Another couple of days he gets his stitches out and Miko can come on heat and we can all just carry on with our lives. But if it wasn't for that, and I didn't have Miko, Fly's already fixed for the same reason. If it wasn't for that, and I didn't have Miko and Fly was fixed, I wouldn't let anyone talk me into any crazy reason why I have to chop my dog's nuts out unless I really want to. So Jeff Langland, pick up my pup next weekend. You don't start using the commanded disapproval till the 2nd month. Can you use it earlier if, say, the pup won't stop yapping in its kennel? Yep, you can. Definitely. Go easy on a real young pup, like that first month. And if you do everything right, you shouldn't have to. And that's and the blueprint's kind of designed that way, and particularly that first month. Like, we don't even do any disciplinary sort of work in that first month of the blueprint in part 1. We just linking actions to commands. We're not forcing the dog to stay sitting. We're just linking sounds to actions and being very gentle with it. And with the kenneling thing, 90% of it is just wearing the pup out so they go in there tired, letting them cry it out for 10 minutes or half an hour, or some people it's longer, letting them cry it out and go to sleep, and then go out and let them out when they're quiet, so they'll learn that going to them and letting them out, being quiet is what is going to trigger us to go to them and let them out. And we sort of do it like that. Okay, so and definitely in that first month with a real young pup, and you're just trying to develop that bond and be easy on it. And we sort of get more and more discipline as the pup gets older. I can't stress enough how young a pup is, in that first month. But if it's really out of hand, and we actually do it in the Palmico Dog Guide in the first month, we do use a command of disapproval, but it's just like a and a stomp of the foot just to snap the pup out of it. So to answer the question, you can do it. You can do it in that first month, but just all within reason, In the last Q&A, we talked about that a lot, Jeff, about in the last Big Game Indicating Dogs Q&A. It's on YouTube, Facebook, and on the Big Game Indicating Dogs pages. It's on the Paul Michaels Revolution podcast. We talked about getting pups quiet in the kennel, using water and different things. If you're really getting stuck there's a lot of really good stuff there. Luke Gordon, what do you carry in the way of first aid kits for your dog in the field? Do you take anything to induce vomiting if they've eaten poison? Also, the dog backpacks, how much weight could they safely carry in it? They look really good, but wouldn't want to load up my dog with stuff. I wouldn't want to load up my dog and stuff his back or anything. Okay. Yep, quite a few questions there. Luke, as far as first aid in the bush for my dogs, I carry a pretty good first aid kit for myself that has, pressure bandages and tape and plasters and, alcohol wipes and lots of different things like that. So I'm basically set up to stop serious bleeding and stuff like that anyway. So I do, and that's something I used to be. I always carried something. Actually, there has been times when I've carried next to nothing, even at really bad times to be carrying next to nothing, like when I was working in the Ure where I was on myself trapping, things like that. But where I really sorted my first aid kit out was when I started, when I did a bit of contract work for Doc and we had to carry it, and some jobs, and it was actually my very first job, different area managers had different protocols for starting jobs and stuff. And the very first job I did on the goat work, and the crew told me too, the guy I was working for told me, he said, the guy that's running this job that we're doing it for is going to check your day bag before you go in. And you've got to have, there was a list of stuff we had to have in our day bag, and we actually all had to lay our day bags out, and this dude walked around and made sure we had it all. And it was, we had to have a raincoat, gloves, beanie, spare thermals, and a first aid kit with a certain amount of stuff in it, and bits of other pieces. He checked our GPS and PLB and a bit of stuff like that. And I've been pretty good with keeping that up to date since doing that. So, and we actually had stuff that we had to carry for that goat work too, that the guy I worked for made us, we basically signed up saying, yep, we're carrying this. And it included a proper pressure bandage, proper wound pads to stop bleeding, proper tape and all that sort of stuff. So I've got that. The one other thing that's really good to have for yourself and your dog is antihistamines. And trying to think, I don't think I may have given a dog half an antihistamine one time when it got hit by stinging needle pretty bad. It was more of a precautionary thing. The dog wasn't showing any real bad symptoms or anything, but I knew it had got tagged up pretty good, and it was rubbing its nose and all of that, and sneezing, and I just knew it had been hit with a stinging needle pretty good. And I just gave it half an antihistamine. If you would take 2 yourself, I can't remember where I got it from. Someone said just give them half of one. So it's like a quarter dose of what you would give yourself. And just the normal way you give a dog a pill, just put it on the tip of my finger and slit it right down the back of its throat, right down the back of its tongue, and they just sort of automatically swallow it. And antihistamine is good to have if you're dog gets a bee sting or stinging nettle. And that's all stuff I carry for myself. So as far as anything specific for the dog, it's a no. But I really have everything that I would use on a dog for myself. Anything other than wasps, stinging nettle, or bleeding, and even those things, if it was real bad, obviously it's only it's just to time those antihistamines and bandages I've got is something just to tie me over to get my dogs out of the bush to a vet. But having said all that, I've never had a dog. I've had it once. Other than I had my old Labrador. This is way back in the day when I was probably 15 or something. I had a Labrador fall off a cliff and break her leg, and that was spotlighting possums. And yeah, she just went in the dark, utter chaos, and I actually knew the cliff was there, and there was a thin row of trees on the top of a cliff, and she chased a possum. And I used to use the dogs for retrieving possums and grabbing possums on the ground and stuff back in the day. And I sent her after this possum out in the middle of a paddock, and the possum was just ran flat stick at this narrow band of trees on top of a cliff, and I saw it coming from a mile away, and she just hit this, and it was only like 2 feet thick, and there was a big drop, and she just hit that 2 foot thick strip of trees at full pace, going like aiming to run straight through them to chase the possum through, but she just went flying straight off the cliff and broke her front leg. And I had to carry her out, but we were just on a farm, so it was like carry her 20 meters back to the truck and go. But other than that, all the years, working with dogs in the bush, especially indicating dogs, because they're not chasing stuff around, they're not attacking stuff, they're not running through the bush, ripping pads and breaking legs and getting smashed up by animals and things. I've never had any problems. I probably had a couple of times with wasps when the dogs got stung up a bit. I can think of twice. And again, it's both back in the day when I was sort of mid to late teens. Over the last sort of 10 years or more, I just haven't had many problems, man. And you don't tend to either, with a really well-trained big game indicating dog that's calm and controlled and staying close and listening and watching. And if you're stalking, you don't tend to be crashing around like an idiot yourself. You're very open and aware, these days, touch wood, literally touching the wooden table in front of me. I haven't even been blimmin' tagged by wasps myself, because you're quietly sneaking through and you sort of see, oh shit, there's a whole heap of wasps coming in and out of that bank, so you just quietly turn around and sneak away, But yeah, anyway, I'm sort of waffling on that, but I have that first aid kit of my own, and that's it. And on the dog packs, Luke, it's a good question that actually. I've got those little dog packs. They're actually like a vest. They're just a vest, light fleece vest that has pockets in the side, and we've sort of made them up ourselves because I couldn't really find anything that was set up the way I wanted it. And on the weight thing, and that's something I've sort of looked into quite a bit, starting right back. Probably come up 8 or 10 years ago now when I was doing possums. And I sort of got interested in pack dogs, and I was starting to think about like using a couple of big dogs to carry stuff. They do it in other countries. It's actually a sport in some countries using pack dogs. In some countries, the first I saw of it was in Mongolia. It was an article in a New Zealand hunting magazine about a Kiwi guy that went to Mongolia hunting elk, and in Mongolia, you know, there's a lot of snow in places there at sometimes a year, and they use these big. It's actually called a Mongolian pack dog, and it's a very, very rare breed of dog. And I was actually trying to work out. I was like, man, I wanted one. It was a ridiculous idea looking back, but I'm pretty good at having ridiculous ideas sometimes. And I was thinking, man, if doing possums, I was like, if I had like a couple of those big dogs the way they're using them, it'd be awesome. And how big was this thing? These dogs were, I think they were like got as big as 50 kilos or more. And a good rule for a proper trained pack dog, and it's not something you just like throw a big pack on and load it up, but it's actually it's a thing. They train it over time, like when they're doing proper pack dog work. Like I said, it's actually a sport in some countries, and they like do little events and stuff. And right from a pup, they're putting a light little pack on and getting the pup used to having something on its back and getting it used to coming in and taking stuff in and out of the pockets and walking around with a thing on its back. And then as it sort of reaches a year or whatever, you know, it's sort of getting that structural maturity, they start gradually putting more weight on it. So the dogs, and they're strengthening the dog up, and they walk it on a treadmill and do all sorts of walking with it and get it fit and strong and ease it into it and turn it into like an athlete that's been trained to carry it. When you do that properly, they talk about those dogs will carry 30% of their body weight, which is quite a bit when it's, if it's a 30 kilo dog, that's about 10 kgs, isn't it? Or thereabouts, just under, which is a lot of weight. My dogs, so Prince, I think is about 25 kilos. Probably the most I put on him would be maybe 4 kilos sometimes, only for like short bursts. But if Prince say 25 kilos, the most I would expect him to carry like all day. And even then, this is only some days, because that's only while we're walking into a spot. And then, you know, I'll have my pack on, which is 15 kilos or whatever. And then I get to camp, set up, dump all my junk. And then I'm day hunting with a lighter pack usually. But to walk into a base, the most Print will carry for long periods would only be about even a couple of kilos. It's just like his chain, a bit of dog food, and that's about it really. And I mainly set them up so going in for a week or 10 days, backpack trips, taking the dogs, and by the time I had their chain and a little tarp and a week's food for 2 dogs and all of that, it was actually getting quite a good lump of gear for me to carry in. And then I also had the issue of like, what were the dogs going to sleep on or in, and I had all of that. And those little vests we made up sort of solve all those problems. It's a coat for them to sleep in. It's got little pockets for them they can carry their food. They can easily carry a week's food, and it's like probably only a couple of, you know, it's probably only 2% of their body weight, you know, so it's way, you know, well within safe limit. Like they don't even notice it. But having said that, from time to time, you know, keeping in mind the fact that if a dog's properly trained, it can carry up to 30% of its body weight. Sometimes Print probably does carry, well, even getting up to 10 or 15%, so probably half of that, you know. And he's a fit, strong dog, and the weight's right up over his shoulders, you know. It's not like in the middle of their back, sagging their back. But every now and again, if I'm climbing up high or whatever, or I don't know where the next water's going to be, he'll have his food and a chain and maybe a little tarpaulin. I've got this a Cuban fiber tarpaulin, which is 150 grams, and it's about the size of a can of baked beans. or not even that. So he'll carry that, and then every now and again, if I don't know how far apart the water's going to be, I've got water bladders. Good, they're like $20 each or something. Good hardy bladders. And I've often got one or two of them empty in my dog's vests, so they just take up no room. They just pack down flat and weigh nothing. And then if I'm like, well, I'm climbing up this hill, I've got my water. The dog's probably going to be thirsty sometime today. I don't know where the next water is. And I'll put a bit of water on them too. And then it might be getting up around... Oh, I'm terrible at maths, doing stuff like this off the top of my head, but... it might get up around, 4 or 5 kilos on print, whatever that is, percentage-wise. So I agree. So Luke... On that, I agree. I'm not into loading dogs up big time, but it's bloody good to get them to carry a bit of junk. It really is, especially in my case where I've got 2 of them. It sort of all adds up a bit. As far as inducing vomiting, do I take anything to induce vomiting if they manage to eat a bit of poison? Two things on that. Well, first of all, no. And I don't even know, I know vets have stuff like that. I don't know where you would get that, but man, if there's any possibility of poison being in the area, just don't go anywhere near it with my dog. You know what I mean? And it's a scary thing, man, particularly in New Zealand, the whole poison thing. And it just sucks. And I'm really wary on it, and but I don't carry any of that stuff, and I'm just really wary of it and don't get anywhere near it. Man, there's heaps of comments over here on the live thing. Nathan Field says, Paul, you've fundamentally changed both my hunting and my relationship with my dog. Thank you. Thank you. Seems so inaccurate. Dude, making me emotional. Yeah, I mean, that's why I do it. So if I've helped you, that's sort of like you are making it worthwhile for me, and sort of the whole thing, man. And I can't do what I do without guys like you that follow it and buy the blueprint and give me support and make comments like that. So it's all just it's all a win-win, man. So thank you. Samuel, how do you stop your dog bolting if she's failed to stop after a loud shout of her name? Got her 3 months old from a shepherd, so may have had some time chasing sheep. She's 16 months now. The chase instinct is strong. As soon as an animal, in brackets, sheep, ducks and deer, has back turns and walks away, she bolts. Real easy answer to that, man, is if you've got a dog that's doing that, you put it on a long line and you train it until it's not. And that's, yeah, man, it's a big topic in itself. But once you've got a dog that's breaking like that, like a lot, and you're saying she's breaking and you shout her name and she doesn't stop, you've got a lot of work to do with that dog before you can hunt over it. And you've got a lot of work to do with that dog before you put her in a situation where she has the opportunity to chase something, unless she's on a long line and you're holding the bloody thing properly and ready to check her. And that's part of the solution in itself, is have her on, know how to use a long line properly and just keep setting her up and stopping her with that long line and get her used to things running away and not being able to chase it over and over and over. But that's not your starting point either. You want your stop, go, turn, attentiveness, non-communicative stops, range. And I mean, in the blueprint we show you how to bloody do all your stuff up to a certain point. So you've got you need to get all your training sorted in a zero distraction environment. It's always about coming back right to the start, setting the dog up to succeed, and getting those patterns and behaviors in place in a zero distraction environment, no matter what. I don't care if it's 16 months old and it's been with a shepherd or it's done whatever it's done. The age and experience of a dog's kind of irrelevant to a certain extent, and it all comes back to where that individual pup or dog is at. And if that dog, I don't care if it's 15 years old, if it's chasing stuff and it's breaking and chasing, then it's at the point where you need to come right back to a zero distraction environment, doing all of your training with the dog on a long line, with the long line, end of the long line wrapped around your hand, and go right back to part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the blueprint, and get all of your stop, go, turn, all of that stuff just sorted in a zero distraction environment. And it basically just follow the blueprint, man. And then I can't remember exactly what part it is, somewhere around 6, 7, 8-ish. We talk about increasing distraction on the stop. And we even show you how to put your dog on a long line, tie a loop in the long line and peg the dog to the spot and start introducing distraction, so it can't get up off the stop. And we show you how to introduce your dog to cows through a fence with your dog on a long line. And just really slowly work your way forward. To a point where something's going on with my live stream here. Something went wrong. I don't know if I'm still streaming here, guys. It's just telling me something's gone wrong, but then it's still saying live and ticking over. And there's a big delay, so I don't see what you guys see for about 20 seconds. Something went wrong. Please check your stream's connection. It still looks like it's working for me. Guys, can you throw a comment whether it's still working? Oh, yep, Josh has already said you're live, you're streaming. Sweet, it's just talking shit. Let me know if it stops streaming. I'm watching the comments. Sweet. Yeah, back to who was it from? Samuel. How do you stop your dog bolting if she's failed to stop after a loud shout of her name? You go right back to the start and work your way back through. And you'll find with an older dog that's got experience, you'll be able to work back through a lot quicker. Get all your basics sorted. Oh, yep, it's switched back now and telling me everything's working perfectly. Right back to start. Get all your basics sorted, man. Just like, and it literally is. It's like, what's the answer to that? It takes about 15 hours, and it takes about 18 months to put together, and it's called the Deer Dog Blueprint. And it actually works bloody well retraining older dogs too. So it's just the same thing. Go right back to the start and just start again, man. It hasn't been done properly with that dog. Like you say, you got her 3 months old from a shepherd, so may have had time chasing sheep. She's 16 months old now. The chase instinct's strong. As soon as she sees an animal, there's something not right there, man. I don't know if you're listening or whatever. I haven't got a ton of back. I don't know what part of the blueprint you're on. I don't know how much training you've done, all that sort of stuff. But there's like a bit of my thoughts on that question or comment. Let us know, message or comment or something. Paul Herman, I'd like to discuss helping my pup become more interested in deer scent? What can I do to try and stop the pup being interested in rabbits? He flushes when walking. How can I desensitize him to jumping kangaroos? Snake avoidance tips. Helping your pup become more interested in deer scent. Again, I need a lot more context on these questions, guys. I need to know how old your pup is. I need to know what part of the blueprint you're on. If it's a question about scent, I need to know how much scent work you've done. When you say it's not that interested, what's happening? Are you doing scent work and it's not interested, or you're trying to hunt it and it's not? There's just not enough context there. What breed is it? Loads of stuff. I need plenty of context on these guys. But you know, do some skin work like within the blueprint. We even say in the blueprint that doing that skin work, a lot of dogs lose interest pretty early because it's just a piece of skin. How do I stop him being interested in rabbits? He flushes. We go over non-target species avoidance training in the blueprint. That's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Been a while since I've said that one. We go over non-target species avoidance training in the blueprint. It's quite basic, but we do it later on towards the end. That's a good go-to, but again, the best go-to for all of that, I mean, with a dog that's well trained, it's just never an issue. And ideally, you would train a dog in an area that doesn't have loads of kangaroos and rabbits until the dog's steady enough that you can, it's controlled and it doesn't just automatically chase running stuff. And even if it does, you can stop it with a stop command, you know. And if you're not there yet, you've got to go back and train again. Yeah, but again, I just need a heap more context. Snake avoidance tips, man, no snakes in New Zealand. It's something I've never had any personal experience with, so I can't really comment on it. I saw a random comment somewhere that there's dudes in Aussie that are right into it, and I saw someone comment somewhere on something, can't remember, that check out this guy. That's like all he does. He's like the master at it or something. So super interesting subject, but really strikes me as something that man, like I know and frequently talk to a lot of pretty good hunters in Aussie, and they just stay the hell out of it in snake season, you know. And yeah, I'm sorry, it's just not something I don't know much about, so I'm just not going to even get into it or pretend I do know about it. I'll give advice on it because it's a bloody serious topic, and my advice is just be really careful, take all the precautions you can, and hey, on that, I can only tell you what I would do if I was going somewhere with a lot of snakes. And I don't know what the deal is with getting a dead snake. I don't know if they're protected or if what. But if it was legal or if it was possible for me to get a dead snake, I'd want to get a dead snake, and I would do avoidance training with the snake in the exact same way that I do non-target species avoidance training in the deer dog training blueprint. And that's how I do it, man. It's pretty simple, long line. But I say we're doing it with a rabbit. But again, I get a really solid base. I get a really solid base of training and dialogue set up with the dog before I attack this sort of stuff. And it's like a chicken and egg thing, you know. It's like once a dog's really well trained and attentive, a lot of the stuff like chasing rabbits and kangaroos and different things it's just like it's same as the health and the same as that safety question. What first aid kit and vomit inducing stuff and stuff do you take? And it's like, yeah, I have a first aid kit, but I don't really need it because my dog's well trained. It doesn't do heaps of stupid shit. And it'd be similar with snakes, like if it's a well-trained indicating dog, it's just nice and close and walking slowly. And yeah, if it was snake season, for sure it could get tagged. And that's why I know a lot of guys that know a lot about snakes and dogs, and they just don't hunt in snake season, and they hunt in the winter. I don't even really know how snakes work and stuff, but if I did want to do something to try and minimize it as much as possible, I would do it in the same way as we do the non-target species avoidance training in the blueprint. If it was possible and legal, I'd get a dead snake. I'd have my dog pretty well trained already, and then I'd put the snake on the back lawn or out in a training area without the dog seeing. And then I'd walk the dog past the snake, and if the dog showed any attention to the snake, I'd go up and check it on the long line, which is pretty much exactly how we do non-target species avoidance training. And there's a few other things to it, and it'll make a lot more sense if you actually watch that part of the blueprint, because then you're actually watching me do it with a dog, and I'm explaining it while I'm doing it, and you're seeing it all happen and everything. And you repeat it until the dog knows it's not meant to have anything to do with that snake, and it works. But it's like poison avoidance. Someone might say, oh, how would you do poison avoidance in New Zealand so you can hunt your dog in 1080 areas? I'd say, man, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't go in a 1080 area, because it's just the stakes are too high and nothing's 100%. So I don't know. Yeah. Cohen Stewart, Paul, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on why a GSP pup following the blueprint still can't manage a sit at 10 months at a distance of 5 metres without a tug on the long line or stepping in, putting pressure on her. What could I be doing wrong? Man, yeah, that's a hard one. Something's definitely wrong, and it's impossible for me to tell you what it is without seeing your training. Yeah, it's pretty rare, man. I don't hear about that sort of thing often, eh? But that's the answer. It's something's wrong. I'm hesitating to say it, but I'd be pretty sure you're doing something wrong. You're missing something, or you've missed something over and over, and now you've got a bad habit that whatever you're doing isn't working to fix it. And you're just in some pattern somewhere, the reading and timing's off somewhere, or something else is off with that dog's routine somewhere else. Someone else is doing something wrong with it. It spends too much time out of a kennel, or something's just gone amiss somewhere, and you're not quite hitting the markers either in your overall management and routine with that dog, or you're not hitting the markers while out training, and most of it will be reading and timing and pressure and praise. And it's really hard for me to give you a good answer without seeing exactly what you're doing. You know what would be interesting here, Cohen, if you can, if it's possible, get someone a video you doing a stop drill with your dog and what's happening and what you are doing when it gets up, and like record 2 or 3 and post it in the inner circle, and then I can see it and comment on it. The one other thing would be where are you based, and maybe doing a one-on-one. Oh, you're in Invercargill. It's a bit of a drive. It's a bit of a drive. I may be down that way sometime, but yeah, something's going on there, man, and it's impossible for me to say without seeing it. Taryn, it's a familiar name. Taryn, were you the one with the timid dog that we were talking about working with, maybe? Taryn, our pup has been chasing, focusing on shadows Okay, chasing hyphen focusing on shadows. Sunny days and at night with lights around. He also focused on the odd leaf, long grass, and I think the odd insect. He wants to play and chase. He is jumping on whatever he's looking at. Do we just keep telling him off with a disapproval command? Is there any other way or thing we can do? Stuart Cooper's offered an answer here. He said his pup used to do that, drove me mad. She'd eat grass while walking, but she's nearly completely stopped it. I use the command of disapproval a lot with the checks on the rope each time. Yep, and that's probably a pretty good answer, Stuart. And some of those things, Taryn, when you say our pup, I'm wondering how old it actually is. But some pups, young dogs in training, as they're coming up, they do have really freaking annoying things, and they're really, really persistent with it. And you have to be really, really persistent in correcting it. And there are certain things with certain dogs that they're just going to do over and over and over, and you've just got to put pressure on it over and over and over without losing your cool or doing anything too drastic. But just keep correcting it every time. Say, cut it out. Maybe be firmer with it. I'm not telling you to do anything horrible to your dog, but maybe be firmer with it. Make sure your timing's bang on. Make sure you're not putting it in a situation where sometimes it's getting to do it a lot on its own, and then other times you're trying to stop it do it, like you're trying to choose when you want it to do it or not. But I'd like to know what breed it is too. Vizslers can be pretty good at pointing flies and shadows and lights and different things. I'm not saying there's plenty of dogs will do it, but it's definitely something I've seen in Vizslers a few times, and not so much in other dogs. Definitely don't want to single out Vizslers there. I've got a 50% Vizsler now. But yeah, so that's my take on that is... yeah, make sure you're not setting the dog up to do it sometimes, and then expecting it not to do it others. You know, is it getting a whole bunch of free time on its own where you're not seeing it, where it's just spending ages doing it? If that's happening, then it's going to be very hard to stop it when you want it to stop it. If that makes sense. If it's, you know what I mean? Like if it's free in some big area for hours and hours a day, and unbeknown to you, it's spending hours doing it, and then you come home and go, oh, what are you doing? And you're trying to stop it for 10 minutes a day. It's not going to work, you know. If it's not that, and you're being really consistent with all your management and everything, then unfortunately it's kind of what Stuart said, and it's just like all dogs. A lot of dogs have one or two really annoying things that you just have to constantly put pressure on over and over, be super consistent, trust in that process, let them age and mature and come into their own. And a lot of those things pass over time with really good training and handling and management. And like Stuart said, his pup used to do it, drove me mad. She'd eat grass, do other things. But she has nearly completely stopped it. He used the commanded approval a lot with checks on the long line every time. And that's kind of how you do it. Okay, Johnny's saying it's still sweet, which I'm guessing the stream's still sweet. He's saying, my bro, 11-week-old pup. His bro's 11-week-old pup is so cruisy, touch wood. But he lives in town. He struggles to find a zero distraction place. You know if there is no way or any dog. Oh, you know, if there's no one or any dogs, etc., there are still all the smells. What's your thoughts? Just deal with it and keep going. Again, man, a bit more context would be awesome. 11-week-old. Bloody young, eh? Real young. And it kind of comes back to what Taryn's dealing with, is that sometimes it's just not easy, and you're just constantly correcting and trying to stay on top of things and trying to walk that fine line and just doing the best you can and keeping everything as tidy as possible under your circumstances, and just repeat and repeat and repeat without being over the top or getting into too much conflict with the dog, and just let them age and mature and come on, and as important as it is to really do everything you can to get into a low distraction environment, it really is. Because I could say just let the dog come on, let the dog, just repeat, let the dog come on. But it might be that, and then other people don't have time or they can't get to a spot, but it might be that you have to put more time aside on a weekend to drive out of town to a quieter spot and just do half an hour out there once or twice a week, or something like that, to start making progress in a real zero distraction environment and start moving towards a point where you can begin to make better progress in semi-distraction environments. Not very good English there, but you know what I mean. So if you are really struggling to get in a zero distraction environment and you're struggling to make progress there, then try driving out of town this weekend and get into a zero distraction environment and spend a good bit of time with your dog and try to just turn that corner where you're getting a bit of stuff happening, it's looking a bit better, and then try in you're the best environment you can get into on a regular basis, and then, oh sweet, and you might start making a bit of progress there, and then weekend after, go back out, work with it again, make a bit more progress, come back, sweet, now it's starting to work. And you just got to, think outside the box and sometimes be prepared to really do the work, Yeah. Let me know if that makes sense, Johnny. Harry's up to part 7 of the blueprint. She's a GSP. Oh, is that adding context to a question from ages ago? I'm not sure. Nathan Senior. Hi, Nathan. Hi, Paul. I've done 8 weeks of scent training with my pup. And with Redskin, he's nice and calm, but Seeker Skin, he gets hypo. Any thoughts? Have done the exact same training on both skins as in the blueprint. That's bloody interesting. Yeah, I no experience with that, man. I don't know what that is. He's saying nice and calm with Redskin. So the skin of doing scent training with deerskin. Nathan's saying he's using the skin of a red deer, which is a type of deer. A red deer is a breed of deer. He's using that skin off that breed of deer, and the dog is calm. But with Seeker skin, it gets hypo. There is a few different variables there. I have seen dogs be quite wary on their first stinky stag, and it's something I've talked about. I talked about that in a hunting video, which is on Facebook and YouTube, Hunting Waiaweka, where Print was tracking a boar, and he was all sneaky and wary and things. And I have seen dogs where, they've taken, on a couple of hinds and spikers and different things, and they're just keen and super interested and wanting to get in there. And then you see, then they start indicating one day and they're all weird and sneaky and different, which could be perceived as being calm. And it's a big old stag, and they can smell that testosterone and gnarliness. They actually can. They know that it's exactly like the difference between if a young pup like Miko, if she sees a playful little dog on the beach, she's all keen to go and bouncy and silly and what you could call it a hyper. if there's a big black staunch dog or whatever, just a big gnarly dog, big intimidating full on, she's very low key and hanging back and looking at me, and this is gnarly. That can be one part of it. So if the redskin was from a smelly old stag, it could be that. I'm completely theorizing here and just like throwing ideas around. That's about the only thing I've seen like that. I've also seen, and we've talked about in other videos, it doesn't make sense here though because they're both deer, but I've seen dogs that are very keen on things like goats and deer and real herbivore animals, but anytime they smell an omnivore like a pig or a cat or a stoat, it's a very different body language, and they're all different. And they do that all off scent. They don't have to see the animal. It's all off the scent. I don't know what they're smelling, the pheromones or chemicals, or they just know, Just throwing a few ideas around there, man. But a couple of ideas. Like, I'm just thinking what I would do if I had a dog that was doing that. If I had a dog that was nice and calm on redskin, I'd probably just keep using the redskin. But then on the other hand, if it was an idiot every time I was working with seeker skin, I'd probably keep working with seeker skin and do a good bit of work there, and put a bit of pressure on it every time it's getting a bit hypo, and I'd be trying to work towards calming it down while it's tracking that seeker skin. We still live here, guys. Everything bloody ticking along. Looks like it. Paul Herman, 6 month old German wire hair pointer up to part 7. He does seem to just plod along and doesn't seem to be interested at all with the skin drags or skin scent in the air. That's bloody unusual for a German wire hair pointer. Usually they've got tons of go. Doesn't seem to be interested at all. Man, it personally, I've never seen of or heard of that with a German wire hair pointer. I talked to one guy earlier this year a guy had followed the blueprint with the Vizsla, and at times the Vizsla was acting disinterested with deer. It was just hit and miss. And I have heard of that a little bit with some breed. It's very, very rare, man. I've almost never seen it with a dog myself, where a dog's like, where you're doing skin work and the dog's showing no interest in the skin, and then you take it out into the bush and the dog just shows no interest in deer. I've kind of never seen that. It's usually the other way, the other problem, way too much interest and all full on and all go. So, just seems to plod along and is not that interested in skin drags or skin scent in the air. I wouldn't freak out about it yet. I would want to know, how's the rest of your training going? I wonder if you're still listening, and I'll do a scroll down. I've got 19 new comments below where I'm up to now. If you can throw down in a comment, Paul, if you're still watching, how's the rest of your training going? 6 months old. If everything else is on track, man, and your introduction of gunfire is going well, everything's going well, and again, it just comes back to what would I do in this case? I'd go, okay, this dog isn't showing much interest in the skin at this point, but a dog like that, man, tends to be pretty easy to keep under control and all of that. You'll be going, oh no, my dog's not showing interest in deer skin. But most people are going, oh no, my dog's showing way too much interest in deerskin and I'm struggling to keep it under control, or I'm struggling to get it to stop to the shot, or I'm struggling to do everything else. I definitely wouldn't freak out about it. I'm interested to know, if you can throw it in the comments, if it's still doing if you're still hitting all your other markers and your range is coming into play nicely and you're working on your introduction to gunfire and if everything else is on track, man. I just keep working on everything else. Get your introduction to gunfire sorted, everything else sorted, and then just go shoot a deer over it and see what happens. That's what I would do. I would just proceed as usual and then just take it hunting, shoot a deer over it following all of the correct practices, take it over, good dog, give it a pat on the deer and just see if that does it. And it can happen. I've heard of it with bird dogs where someone's just really struggling to get a up and coming bird dog to really fire and want to retrieve and want to have interest in feathers and birds and all of that, and it just isn't happening, and they get everything else set up that they need to set up to hunt, such as introduction to gunfire, get the dog very comfortable around gunfire, get all your controls set up, all your other commands, and go and shoot a bird over the thing and see what happens. And every now and again, that stimuli of a real frickin' animal, and bang, and you're on. So, and it really can happen like that too. I know of people that's happened with. So yeah, I'm going to scroll down right now and see if you're still here. Yep, stops great, turns well, range is consistent, really bored to gunfire. So yeah, and that's what I'm meaning, Paul. For everyone listening, that's Paul's comment regarding his dog that's not showing interest in skin. That's why I'm not like, that's why I talk about drive, man, and you know, like Fly, who has just ridiculous amounts of go on. You know, you can hunt over her, shoot goats over her 10 days straight, shoot 100 goats, you know, or whatever you want. And you could do it for 100 days. And be walking back to camp in the pissing down rain after shooting more goats than anyone wants to shoot. And if she smells a goat hundreds of meters away, she'll indicate, she's like, there's another, she'll just won't stop. So much drive to hunt and work on a real animal, it's ridiculous. Like, way more than I'll ever need. And she wasn't that interested in skin, man. She did a bit of it, like I'm talking a few, and then she was just like, why are we doing this? It's a piece of skin, you know? So, and that can really be the case too, you know, and this whole thing, I touched on it earlier about people getting confused with drive, and what some people associate with drive is actually hyperactivity. And man, I was listening to the Stephen Ranella, the Meat Eater podcast, and he was talking about a guy, and I really should know this guy's name, and excuse me for not knowing off the top of my head, but he has the Gun Dog podcast or something like that. I've got it. I'm following them on Instagram. I think he's actually been on Meat Eater with Stephen. He's in the States. Let me bring it up so you can check it out. Gun Dog podcast? That's not it. Where is it? Oh, what's his bloody name? Hunting Dog podcast? Bird Dog podcast? The Hunting Dog podcast, that's what it's called. Hosted by Ron Boehme. Ron, it's spelled Boehme. It says, this podcast is an ever-growing diary of our life experience with dogs and friends, and the Hunting Dog podcast. And I heard Stephen, he's got, Jeremiah will like this, he uses Italian pointers. Bracco, are they Braccos? What the hell are they? The Bracco Italiano, whatever it is. He's got big old moochy ones of them. And really cool guy, and you know, you only have to watch him for 2 minutes and you know he knows his shit, you know. And I was listening to the Meat Eater podcast, and Stephen was talking about him and just that he'd just been through and through with bird dogs for over 20 years, and he had something to do with judging bird dogs and something, and he knows what he's talking about. And Stephen was talking about something that he was talking about, and it was use of nose. And he was talking about it and explaining it, and it was, you can have the dog with the best nose on the planet, or all the hyperactivity in the world, that dog that's quivering and can't sit still and it's all over the place and it's whimpery and whiny and just wants to break and chase everything. But all of that stuff often doesn't transfer over into a dog that will really just hunt and actually get the job done and execute and do it properly. And I've seen it over and over. And I've even forgotten where this rant started. Oh, it's about Paul Herman and his dog with the skin. Not showing interest in the skin. It's not showing this full-on hyperactivity interest in the skin and just wanting to go for it. Often dogs like that. I'm not saying, and people are going to be all up in arms, he's telling people to use dogs that don't like deerskin. He's crazy. And that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying just because a dog goes nuts over a piece of skin doesn't mean it's going to be mind-blowingly good day after day, hour after hour out on the hill and get the job done. And just because a dog isn't nuts about a piece of skin over and over and over doesn't mean it's going to be like a ridiculously good, driven, methodical job that'll just get the job done over and over and over and over and over and over. And if anything, I have seen a correlation between dogs that lose interest in something like an inanimate piece of dead skin early, and a dog that's just going to have that real methodical drive. Like the Fly's a classic case. Fly's a classic case of that, where, man, she's just really good. And her drive and stuff, and how far she'll try to take you to an animal, and she doesn't want to pull off, and how much determination, how methodical she is. She just doesn't stuff up. Because she's not all frantic and all over the place. Those dogs that are all frantic and they overshoot the scent and they pull off, and you know, when they're trying to track one deer and they get all sidetracked on something else and distracted and all, they're like a hyperactive person. You know, who do you want to help you do a job? Do you want someone that's hyperactive and all over the place, or do you want the dude that just turns up and goes, yeah, I'll help? What are we going to do? You know, and dogs are the same. And I've seen it over and over, and I've seen dogs that have they're all that full-on dog, but when it comes to the crunch and you get out in the field and you're trying to track a deer with the bloody thing, they're all over the place and they don't even do it properly. So that's what I mean. Often I've seen more of a correlation between that full-on hyper dog actually not having the chops in the field, and I've seen more of a correlation of that dog that, man, it doesn't seem that bloody interested here. But when we actually get out and start doing it, I'm like, oh okay, no, we're on, you know. So there's just a big sort of rant on that. But yeah, that the hunting dog podcast and that guy Ron Boehm. That's completely not how. I apologise, Ron, if you ever listen to this, mate. I'm going to have to work out how to say your name properly. But just they know their shit, you know. And Stephen was talking about it. Just come up, and they were talking about, I can't remember how it came up. They're talking about scent or the way deer scent or something, and then Stephen Ranella ended up talking about what Ron was saying about use of nose, and that dog that it just doesn't drop lip, you know, and it'll just go all day and keep going, and they were talking about all of this stuff about humidity, and Ron knew like the actual percentage of humidity that was like optimal for a dog to work, and all of this crazy stuff. It was, yeah, well worth a listen, I'd say. Do we have we got anything else, guys? Oh yep, I'll scroll past a couple here. Oh, Nathan said on the dog that was calm on the red and hyper on the seeker, that both skins are off stags. Even when I drag both skins side by side, then split the trail, he always goes for the seeker, then finds the red afterwards. That's interesting, man. It really is. And I mean, different dogs always do have their weird little funny idiosyncrasies, you know, with what they're interested in, what they want to hunt. Fly wasn't that overly interested in pigs, and I talked about this quite a bit, and then I shot a few pigs over, and she's just a pig frickin' maniac. Print, on the other hand, he almost showed more interest in pigs before he'd even shot one. He just the first time he smelt a pig, he went, man, that smells like something I want to have a lot to do with. And he was just indicating like mad and just keen on it. And I was actually like pulling him off pigs for a while, because I was sort of in the blueprint, and early on with him, I was sort of trying to show people how to keep a dog more species specific. But now I've shot a couple of pigs over, and he continues to be really keen on them. And other dogs, you know, like will naturally be very interested in goats. Really interesting conversation with a guy. I won't drop his name because I don't know if he'd even want to be involved. But an extremely knowledgeable guy on dogs, like farmer, used them dogs on farms all his life, working dogs, pig hunter all his life. In his 60s, easily. Had God knows how many dogs, you know, really passionate about it, and just anytime we start talking about dogs, it's just a mess because you know, we're just into it, and it's an hour's gone just like that. But and then he's a really interesting guy to talk about dogs too, because he's actually got deer on his farm, he's got wild deer on his farm, he's a pig hunter, he's got sheep on his farm, he's got cattle on his farm, he's got goats on his farm, and he also uses his dogs, he's got heading dogs that he also uses to round up goats, to round up sheep, to round up cattle, to round up deer, and then he goes and uses them as pig dogs on the weekend. And they'll indicate deer as well, and they'll also round them up. It's actually pretty crazy. And he made the observation that if you've got a dog that just wants to chase everything, and you haven't done any aversion training, and you haven't done any work like encouraging them to go for one over the other, he reckons most dogs will have, if you've got I can't remember exactly which way around it was something like if you've got a deer and a pig and a sheep and a goat all in a paddock, And depending on what kind of dog it is, some dogs will go out and just want to head them and bring them back to you. Some dogs will want to go out and bail them up in a corner, run them into a bloody ditch and bail them up. And other dogs are just going to want to go out and sink some teeth and grab hold of it. He said if you've got a pig and a goat and a deer and a sheep and all these different things out in the paddock, most dogs will go, I know it was a goat first. He said for whatever reason, dogs are just programmed to want to go for goats. And ask most pig hunters. It can be hard to keep young, keen dogs off goats. And it's far easier to get them into goats than it is to pigs. And often, I don't want to say deer come in last. I've seen dogs where deer come in before pigs, like Fly. She was very keen on deer. But then I trained her to hunt them. And I started shooting them over her following good practice. And I trained her right, and she was just set up to want to do what I wanted her to do, and she just turns into this beast on whatever I want her to do. But what I'm saying is, different dogs have their funny little idiosyncrasies on different things, and you've obviously got a dog that for whatever weird reason really likes the idea of having lots to do with seeker. But a red, it's like, meh. But I guarantee you, if you go out and start shooting reds, I don't think there'll be much. Maybe if there's a red, if a red and a seeker have walked along next to each other and one's gone one way and the other's gone the other, it might go for the seeker. But I guarantee if it was only the red, it'll still take you to that if you've shot reds over in the past, So it's an interesting little thing you got going on there. It'll be interesting to sort of see how it turns out, Joseph Olson, how's it going, mate? I still haven't given that nice bit of gear that I've got sitting on my shelf here a thrashing yet. It's getting closer though. At what age do you do the bird avoidance training with Doc in order to do the dog permit? It doesn't really matter. But if I had the choice and I could do it at any time, I would tend to leave it later on until, I've sort of got everything pretty solid and try to do it a month or two or just before I start hunting. So just get everything else done and then do it. And not sort of throw it in the mix earlier on. Having said that too, it's all pretty inconsequential. There's no real consequence to it either way. And if you're like, my dog's 6 months old, it'd just be easier if I do it now and then I don't have to do it later for whatever reason. Sometimes it's hard. So for people listening, Joseph's talking about Kiwi and sort of avian aversion training, it's called. In New Zealand, we've got Kiwi, a flightless ground bird native. And we've also got blue ducks, and we've got a few native birds that hunt totally protected. Some of them are endangered, and you really do not want your dog killing these birds. And in a lot of areas in Department of Conservation land, in order to take a dog hunting, we have to do what Doc called either Kiwi aversion training, and now in a lot of areas they're calling it avian aversion training. It used to be they'd just do Kiwi aversion, which is our flightless, native bird, the Kiwi. But now they're adding other things onto it, and they're doing... They're also using the scent of blue duck and stuffed blue ducks and blue duck or Fio, which is a native duck which is endangered in New Zealand. So they sort of switched the name up to it's just avian aversion training. They're saying, look, if you want to take a dog into Dockland in New Zealand to hunt big game, it's not allowed to want to kill birds as well while it's in there, and which is fair enough. And we do get questions about, oh, is it going to stuff my dog up for duck hunting, or is it going to do this and that? And it really doesn't. And my take on the whole thing is, I think for actually the purposes of training and actually having the avian aversion training work, I think, the older the dog can be to do it, the better. And the more sort of actual proper training you've completed, and the better trained the dog actually is. So you've got dialogue with the dog, and the dog's learning quick. It's older, it's more mature, it already knows a whole bunch of stuff. It knows to look to you. It's learning stuff quickly now, like everything's starting to fall into place. I think Kiwi aversion training, avian aversion training just works better later. It just does. And the closer you do it before you start hunting, then the training's going to work better. It's better for the dog. It's better. It's got a higher chance of actually working, so your dog actually won't harm or chase native birds, which is a good thing. So that's my advice, is to try to wait till the dog's, 8 or 10 or 12 months old or something like that before you do it. Having said that, sometimes it can be blooming hard to get it done. In some areas, there's a trainer right there all the time ready to go. I've had it when it's like, right, need to go hunting next month with my dog, or sometimes I've had it when I'm like, I need to go hunting next week. I'll get him aversion trained, and you start ringing around, and one guy's away and the other guy's not doing it at the moment, and there's like near on no one in my end of the North Island that's doing it, and I have to get it done before I take my dog hunting. So if you're in a case like that where you're like, well, there's a guy that's going to be here this weekend, my dog's only 6 months old, and I have to do it before I start hunting, and I don't know where my next chance to get it done is going to be, I'll do it. And just do what you have to do to follow the rules and have your dog properly certified and all of that. On the subject, I've never seen it have a detrimental effect to a bird dog's drive on ducks and things. It's only dogs have good situational awareness. It's done with a Kiwi. Dogs are very good at knowing the difference between different animals and things like that, and it's just never an issue. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to do it, or should I do it? Or it's in my experience, it's fine. And another sort of interesting thing to cover on this is the fact that, and I'm not saying here that, hey, perhaps we don't need to get our dogs done. We do, and we really should, and it's bloody important. But it's never that much of an issue with a big game indicating dog, because it stays at your feet and it's not charging around doing what it wants. You're not depending on the dog to be doing the right thing out of sight, So yeah, that's. I hope that answers it, man. David Spring, my dog goes well with skin, but on fresh deer scent, and she's a mess. What am I doing wrong? Context, man. What does she's a mess mean? Is she scared of it? Is she keen on it? Is she not? Is she pulling out? How old is she? What part of the blueprint are you on? What have you? If you're still listening, just throw a bit more context there. Dog goes well with skin, but on fresh deer scent, she's a mess. What am I doing wrong? Yep, I need to know a bit more. We had some questions on the Big Game Indicating Dogs public page. How's the sound going here, guys? Is it all pretty good? We kind of slowly but quickly approaching a position where I'm struggling to, up until very recently, I've basically like hit like on every single comment anyone ever puts on Big Game Indicating Dogs, and I've immediately replied to every comment on every post and immediately replied to every message. I'm really just starting to get to the point where I'm struggling to keep up. Yeah, I knew it was going to happen one day. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing all at once. It's a good thing because we're growing and we're slowly actually getting to the point where we may not go broke trying to do this. But yeah, it's just meaning that we're getting to the point where I can't directly answer everyone's messages and questions, and that's like the whole idea of these Q&As and the podcast and all of that, and why I started sort of recording all of my answers and things to just try to cover all the bases as best I can. One I had and I've just got a couple of questions here in messages that I'll get to soon if we have to. So David's saying too keen. About 12 months old. Man, you're pretty... I don't want to call you out here, David, but you're pretty vague. About 12 months old. No, you're all good, man. Okay, so David, his dog, goes well on the skin. So he's saying it's quite calm and controlled on the skin, but it's excited and too keen on real deer. It's about 12 months old. He's just starting to hunt. So he's about on target, and it's a very common thing. Have you watched the updates at the end of part 12, David? Thanks, Luke. He's just letting us know the sound's good. Sweet. The updates we did off the end of part 12, David, we put them up like earlier this year, and it's the final 20 minutes of part 12. Just throw in the comments if you've watched those, because that'll be, yeah. Yeah, he's saying she pulls away and forgets your training. And the reason I say that, David, is because we added it to the end of part 12. Massive update, probably the biggest update we've put on the blueprint, is all about exactly this. It's about dogs that, they're perfect in training, and a lot of dogs even start off hunting really well too, while they're learning and they're a bit tentative, sort of building confidence. And you shoot a few deer over them, they get keener and keener, more and more confidence, and this dog that was perfect in training and perfect for their first few deer just starts to turn into a real bloody handful. And I made a big sort of 20 or 30 minute update in the blueprint talking about all the sort of key things that you can do to control that. One of the easiest go-tos is just start hunting on the long line again, just with the dog dragging the long line. Others is actually using change of direction in the bush while your dog is trying to take you to a deer. Turn it around, putting pressure on. A lot of people, they'll say, oh, my dog's too keen, or it's pulling away, or it's doing this, or it's doing that. And I'm saying, well, what are you doing to stop it? And they'll say, oh, I sort of felt like maybe I should tell it off, but I didn't want to affect its drive, which isn't a good train of thought to be having, particularly with an indicating dog, particularly one that's getting out of hand, getting overconfident, particularly when you've shot a couple of deer over and it's really starting to hit its straps and go, man, I know exactly what I'm doing here, so let's go, and they start turning into a real handful. It actually can be quite important to start putting a bit of pressure on a dog like that. Measured pressure comes back to the whole principles of pressure and praise, and putting pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want. That's why I'm so huge on principles, because if you just really come back to them every time and you go, okay, my dog's pulling out, it's getting too keen, I don't want it to be doing that, And the principle of pressure and praise means put pressure on what you don't want, and you just always come back to those first principles, and to make your own decision in your own situation, you go, shit, I've actually got to put pressure on my deer dog while it's trying to take me to a deer. It's quite counterintuitive, but those principles are, they're pretty much never wrong, you know. Okay. Yeah, sorry. David says, sorry, mate, I'm a lazy typer. No, I'm not. You're all good, man. I know what you mean, and you're bang on with all that stuff. And he says, yep, he'll go back to part 12. Yeah. Those updates in part 12 really have solved a lot of problems for people and answer a lot of questions, but we're basically just going right back into that. And it shows me, it actually shows Print trying to pull away and break his range. I show you Fly breaking on a deer and me using a massive command of disapproval with her in the field on deer. It shows you Print semi-breaking on a deer. I basically let him do it, and he just sort of trots off. It's a deer down south out in the open. On a river, a stag runs right up to us, and I don't even want to shoot it. It runs in, and I'm just filming it, and I'm sort of standing there having a laugh about the stag, and it's bouncing off across the river rocks, and Print just sort of half-ass gets up and I just gave a quiet hiss. And he may have not even heard it, you know. He was sort of 10 or 15 meters away, and I sort of went, and he wasn't like a full-on break. He was just sort of half-assed, trotting ahead with his head up, just trying to keep it in view, and just like, whoa, this is cool. And I just gave him a big command of disapproval, Print! And he was like, well, not meant to do that. We're not meant to chase the deer. And I talk about hunting on a long line, with the dog just dragging a long line, using change of direction in the bush, and just all the ins and outs of reining them in, man. I skipped a few questions from the start. Okay, go back. Sorry, mate. It's not letting me open up. Or can you throw that question in again, Stuart? Sorry, man. Just throw your question in again. I can't scroll right back up. Something to do with being alive. I think you can open all the comments later, but I've got two computers open. I've got the one that's showing me streaming live, and I've got another one that's open showing me what you guys are seeing. Yeah, sorry, Stuart, can you throw your question again? Even copy and paste the questions I've missed or something. I've been getting a few questions about choosing dogs. People have been writing me messages. How do you choose? Oh, here's Stuart's question. He's saying he's having a lot of issues with his pup being... Having a lot of issues with my pup being very distracted around dogs and people, as well as just on walks. I've also got a calm, trained dog. I might not have, Al. Can you just throw it back in the comments? Stuart's having a lot of issues with his pup being very distracted around dogs and people, as well as just on walks. I've also got a calm, trained dog that doesn't live with me. He's with his grandparents just as a pet. I was just wondering if you might think it's a good idea to get him back for a few months to socialise with the pup. It's not a bad idea. You know, if it's a nice, calm dog, it can be bloody handy when you're raising and training a pup to have a nice, calm, older dog around. People talk about, oh, do you use your older well-trained dog to train the pup? And I'm not a huge fan in that. It's good for things like pig hunting and, when a dog's got to run out and really hunt and have confidence and hunt with the pack and all that sort of stuff. For a big game indicating dog, I'm not a huge fan on it. I'd rather just do everything from scratch and have the pup all about working with me, not with another dog and things. But for socialization, proper, going back to the rant that we started this with, for good socialization, it can be nice to have a nice, calm, older dog around that, one, doesn't let the pup get away with too much shit, doesn't let the pup swing off its ears and bite it around the neck and do all sorts of stuff you don't want your pup to do with other dogs. And also an older dog that's not going to be too grumpy either and give the pup a towel up, give the pup a hiding or be too snappy or grumpy and growly. And that can be quite handy if you've got a dog-proof section or a dog-proof area raising a pup. You can just if you've got the right older dog to just leave the pup with and just have a bit of free time to relax and socialize and burn off a bit of energy and just chill out. Not on its own, but not with you there, so it's off the long line running around having a bit of playtime, but it's not associating that playtime with you. So that older dog can, in that separation in that good dog-proof area, is a good way for the pup to wind down and relax and have that outlet. But when you step back into the picture, bang, it's back on. Control. You know what I mean? Until it's fully trained. So that's just a few sort of ideas thrown around on that. How old's your pup, Stuart? TJ Willis, this was mine that was missed. Hi Paul, I picked my pup up in a few weeks. I've watched the Palmico and Blueprint videos, but I'm wondering if you have any daily schedule or a rough guide what to cover in each training session for each part of the program. Yeah. Man. Talked about this in the Palmico Q&A, talking about time frames and frequencies, like how many stop drills should I do with my pup's 12 months old or my pup's 12 weeks old and it's at this stage. So how many minutes should I be training a day and how many stop drills should I do during those minutes and how many minutes apart should they be and all of that. And the answer is it doesn't work like that. Most people's lives don't work like that and most dogs don't work like that. And I talked about in that Palmico Q&A that we did last night. It's on Facebook, YouTube, under Palmico. It's on Palmico Dog Training, all for free. Anyone can watch it there and anyone can watch it on the Paul Michaels Revolution podcast. Listen to it on the podcast. It comes back to those principles. And someone was saying, my dog's like perfect for the first 3 stop drills. And then it sort of turns to shit. So the answer is only do 2 then. Because it comes back to that principle of always setting a dog up to succeed and never setting a dog up to fail. So if you find a pattern of, man, I can always do 2, but sometimes if I try to do 3, the pup starts getting silly and rolling around like an idiot, then just do 2. And just do 2 for ages, until it's getting really solid. And then I don't care if it's in a month's time, then try to do, oh cool, I did 3 now. But if you're making progress doing 2 a session, then why do you need to do 3 anyway, And if you can make progress doing 3 training sessions a week, then why do 7? But if you're not making progress doing 3 a week, maybe you need to do 4 or 5. And every dog's different, and every owner and handler's different, and every combination of dog and owner is different. So with me, I might be able to train a certain dog doing 3 sessions a week. Someone might have to do 5 sessions a week. I might have to do 5 sessions a week with one dog, the way I train. Someone else might be able to do it in 3. And that's why I'm always coming back to principles, and that's why it's so hard to say. That's why nowhere in the blueprint it's like, okay guys, with this stage, do 11 minutes of training 3 times a week and do 2 of these drills and 3 of those until for 18 days, and then it's automatically all going to click over and go. That's just never going to work. So it's really about sticking to all those principles, working with your pup or dog the best you can to make as much progress as you can without rushing or being impatient, and always thinking, well, and it usually is going to work out this way. If you think you can get it done in 3 weeks, relax and do it in 4. If you think your dog is going to be ready by 8 months, don't start hunting till it's 10 months old. It's always err on the side of caution. Give it more time, And if it starts turning to custard after 10 minutes, do 5 minutes of something, Or if your dog, if you're only doing 10 minutes, but your dog looks like it needs more exercise, do half an hour. And the other thing is different dogs change too. 1 week, for whatever reason, it might have been pissing down all weekend and your dogs have done bugger all. Then you'll do a couple more longer training sessions Monday, Tuesday. But if you were busy all weekend and the dogs were doing heaps, you might only do none Monday, Tuesday, and the dog might just get a few freedom sessions. You know what I mean? So, does that make sense? TJ? Yeah. It's really just about just trying to roughly stick to that. I'll try to get these things done in month 1. And then, yeah. So TJ's just said, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. But yeah, so it's just like, okay, what's Paul up to in month 1 with print? And that's why later on in the blueprint, we start giving you those updates. And I've seen a comment and I had to laugh. It was on a thread on a forum. And it was like, and usually the only reason I see these things is because people will screenshot stuff or send a link to any blueprint stuff to me, and say, oh, I saw this, or here's a real cool comment about you, or sometimes it's like, here's someone slagging you off, so oh my God, have you seen this? And I'm like, nah. But what I'm saying is that I tend to see everything that's said about me because it all lands in my inbox one way or another. I don't sort of try to pay too much of attention to it myself. But one guy was saying, oh, you keep going over that bloody update every time, and it's driving me nuts. But that's the purpose of that, man, is that's that update that we start doing. I think we start doing it in part 3 or 4, and we do it at the start, and they end up being about 10 or 15 minutes long, and I say, now we're going to go over our update. This is everything Print is doing at this stage of training before we move on to the things that we're doing in this part of the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. It's very important that your dog is doing all these things before you start. That's your marker, man. And it doesn't matter how old your dog is, what breed it is, how much or how little training you're doing. It's all about just getting your dog to that. So going, and that's, people say, my dog's 3 months old. What part should I start at? And it's always start at part 1. Because that your dog might be 3 years old. but you still have to start at the start and get those fundamentals. You don't want to start trying to do a sit drill where you're saying sit and stepping back and walking around in circles before your dog sits when you say sit. The first part of sit is linking the action to the command, and that's in part 1. If you watch part 1 and go, my dog already does all that stuff, sweet, check out part 2. And if it does all that stuff, go, oh, sweet, I can do part 2 now. Move on to part 3. And then you see stuff in part 3, oh, my dog's not doing any of that, so I'll start there. Or there might be, your dog might be doing, almost everything in part 1, but there's one thing you're like, oh, my dog's not doing that, even though Paul's working on that at 8 weeks old, but I haven't done that yet with my 8-month-old dog, so I better just tidy up on that because it's all in order. Good dog training is lots of very, very basic steps, but all in the right order and all carried out properly. James. This is his question from earlier. Been doing lots of off long line training lately. My Vizsla has started to indicate larger birds and cats while off long line. She's 12 months old. I've been using disapproval command and turn command. What do you reckon? I heard Vizsla do weird indicating stuff. She hasn't done this at all before. Yeah, so she's just getting older. Dogs are just like people, man. As they age and get maturity, they start to take notice, and more, some stuff that used to be interesting becomes less interesting, and stuff that used to not be interesting becomes interesting, if that makes sense. And a 12-month-old Vizsla might be getting to the point where it's not interested in the fluffy toy laying in the back lawn anymore, but it's starting to get interested in the cat, over the neighbour's fence. But, like what you've said, just using the command of disapproval and turn command, that's all you're doing, man. That's it. I don't know, are you hunting? That'd be interesting. If you're hunting or not. If 12 months old, you're probably right around the stage of maybe just starting, or you've just done a couple. There's a situation or a dynamic that can happen with dogs, particularly hunting dogs, or any dog really, is as they reach a certain age, they really start to look for a purpose in life, and you just start to see it happen, and a dog just gets to a certain point, and some dogs, sorry guys, I'm getting distracted. Comments keep popping up and I keep checking on them. I'll start again. As a dog reaches a certain age, they start to look for a purpose in life. They start to, exactly like this question. It wasn't paying attention to the neighbour's cat, and all of a sudden it's like eyeing up the neighbour's cat, and it's eyeing up birds, and it's like trying new things, and it's just gaining intensity. It's looking for something to do. What's its purpose in life? Where is it going to channel its energy? And I've seen it, I was going to say a lot, but I've seen it a few times where it's like a marked difference where I'm training a dog, big game indicating dog, and its training's going well. Starts off as a young pup, laying my foundation. I'm getting 6-7 months old, It's I'm getting into the guts of it, and I'm doing my introduction to gunfire and water and skin work and obstacle training. My range and everything's coming into getting in place and starting to tidy up. 10, 11, 12 months old, all my heels coming in, non-communicator training, attentiveness, turns, automatic stops, and all of that, and everything's just tidying right up and getting real good, and you just start to see them gain intensity and get a little bit harder to handle, and they're starting to be a bit of a pain in the ass, and then you take them hunting and shoot a couple of deer and give them a pat, and then you go out again and you walk all day looking for deer, and the dogs just go, okay, this is it. This is what I'm doing. This is, and you see the dog relax again, and then you go and shoot a few deer, and that's that huge like energy outlet for the dog. And you come home and now they're not interested in the neighbour's cat anymore, and they don't care about the bird anymore, because they've got other stuff to do. They know what they're meant to do, and now you've got a dog, instead of a dog that's like constantly looking around trying to work out what it can do, where can it unleash its energy and focus and drive. You've got a dog that knows where it can do that, and it just sits around waiting for the next opportunity to do that. And if you do it right with a deer dog or a big game indicating dog, you've got a dog that's just sitting there waiting to go hunting next. And that's like that's all they're about. They're a nice pet too, and there's all those other aspects to them. But I just wanted to explain that if a dog and they get to a certain age and they start eyeing stuff up, sometimes there can be that phase where they're getting ready to really do something in life. They don't know what it is yet, and until you shoot a few deer over them following really all the correct practices, they're not going to know what what their meaning of in life is until you do that. And once you do that, they go, sweet, I know what we're all about. And it can be a positive and help. Yeah. We're at 2 hours, guys. Any other questions from the inner circle? So one question I've had a few times lately is choosing a pup. How do you choose a pup? What breed do you choose? And I've talked about it quite a bit, off and on in different places, and it's a really common question, and it's just a bit of a coincidence that I've had the same one over and over, and then I've often had it when I haven't had time to answer it and things. And first of all, and without saying, look, just buy the blueprint, but a big part of part one talks about that, and it talks about breeds and how I choose my dogs, and I actually talk about how I chose print, why I chose print to train as a big game indicating dog in the blueprint, and then we actually take you to the breeder to where I pick him up, and he just shows it perfectly too, and he print does what he originally did to cause me to choose him. And we talk about breed, and I talk about how I like the quiet dog that stands back a bit. I've talked about this in many other Q&As. People ask me, what's a good breeder? Where can I get where do you get your dogs? What do I do? Man, I don't get involved in like telling a guy what dog to get, or what breeder to use, or what breed of dog to use. We talk about that a bit in the blueprint, and again, this is a subject we've talked about quite a bit. Numerous times people are like, will message me, "Hi Paul, I got my pup a month ago and I'm wondering what's a good time to start with the blueprint." The blueprint's actually ideally designed to get before you even get your pup, because we talk about how to choose a dog, and we talk about different types of breeds and a lot of different ins and outs of it, and that's, recently we switched back so you can buy the blueprint to own it forever. And that was just a thing we did through feedback and different things, and because a lot of people look at it, it is that really long-term investment. And then a cool thing about that is, and then I also say, it's actually ideal if you can watch the whole blueprint, like even before you even choose a pup. Like if you want to get it, look, this is the ideal way of using the blueprint to me, is if a guy went, or a girl, if a person decided they wanted to get an indicating dog and go, okay, I'm going to get it in a couple of months or a year or 2 years, because you can buy the blueprint to own forever. But if you brought the blueprint and first watch part 1 and start to understand how and why I choose my dogs, and then start watching the whole training, 15 hours, watch the whole thing, just, I don't know, watch half an hour every 2 or 3, every 2 or 3 days. It would take you a month or 2 to watch through the whole thing. Maybe watch some bits twice. But right through to when we start hunting and how I'm finishing the dog off in part 7, 8, 9. We have a lot of people that are getting confused and frustrated and with the 6-month-old pup in part 4. They're saying, my dog's doing this, how do I fix that? And then I say, well, it doesn't matter now, because it's all in, we do that in part 8 and you're not even there yet. But if you had to watch part 8, you wouldn't be freaking out and you'd be all relaxed and your training would be going better. And if you've watched part 11 and 12, all the hunting and how we track and hunt and handle a dog in the field and all the different things that we're going to want to do, and print switching from winding to tracking and from tracking to winding, and everything that happens, if you understand all that stuff, even coming right back to understanding what sort of pup or dog you want to choose, it's so much easier if you've watched that whole thing and you understand it. Like it really is. So that's, that's a huge bit of advice on that. I can't stress enough how useful it is and how much that would help if you have watched the whole blueprint. It's bloody long, and I'll waffle on forever and ever. But training a dog isn't something that there's no 3-minute answer to it, there really isn't. And it's sort of the whole idea of the blueprint. But to answer the question as quickly as possible, to not just give that question of buy the blueprint and all will be revealed, you've got a handful of your main breeds. I love heading dogs, love them for a dedicated big game indicating dogs. From there's a top sort of 5 or 6 in no particular order. German wire-head pointer, German short-head pointer, Vizsla, Labrador. You got your Bracco Italiano, the Italian pointer. Some guys go all right with Spaniels. Some guys go really well with English pointers. I don't think any one of these breeds, including the heading dog, none of them are the be-all or end-all, And every time you get a guy that's, you've got to get this breed, and you really just... No, you're not really taking it seriously if you get one of those, and you really need to get one of these, because it's this and it's that, and it's... proceed with caution anytime anyone starts saying, that this is the only one or this is the only way or something like that. But, then you get a guy that's got, or a girl, you've got a human that has a dog that's like, they don't even know what breed it is. It's like it's just a dog that the auntie had it. And then they took it hunting one day and started shooting deer over, and it's just, he sort of fluked it, or he knew a bit about training, and he's just sort of pieced it together, and it's just a beast, and they don't even know what it is, but it's just the right dog. The individual, and I've said this over and over, getting the right individual dog and then doing the right stuff with it is just a zillion times more important than the type of breed or who you get it off, and you can get the best bred dog off the biggest legend on the planet and even do the right stuff with it, but if it's not the right individual dog for actually what you're doing, it might not be as good as a dog could have been had you got a dog from a less legendary breeder of a less legendary breed, but it was just the right individual dog. It was right for the task, So there's just so much to it, but in the blueprint, we go over all this stuff. All this thing was breeds and ins and outs, and labs are, labs do better in the cold, but then they don't have the natural sneak, and Vizslers and GSPs have an awesome natural sneak, but they can struggle in the cold. And wire hairs are really good, but they have a ton of, all those German pointers and including Vizslers can have a heap of drive and mature slower. Heading dogs, for me, have a very nice spread of everything. They tend to be fairly easy to train. They tend to go all right in the cold. They're pretty hardy. They hunt pretty good. Strong eyes have a bit of a sneak. That's why I like them. But another thing, really, really important, is if you've always wanted a Vizsla, don't get a heading dog because I like him. That's really important, and it's with choosing a dog. This is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing. And it's never down to one thing. It's always a combination of lots of things that you want to try to get right and line up to have the best chance of success. Arguably, the single most important one of those many things is that you like the dog and that you've got the dog you wanted to get and that you're just happy with what you've got. It's really, really important. And it's nothing new. It's nothing any experienced dog, you ask them. If you know an experienced dog trainer, say to them, the guy said, do you think it's important that I like the dog I get, or is it important that I get the one that the best expert tells me to get? And they'll say, it's very important that you get the one you want to get. It's important to do it within the range of sensibility. If you're trying to train a big game indicating dog, it's awesome to get the one that you most want to get within the realms of what is good for a big game indicating dog, which is I basically just called it out there. Most of your hunting breeds, your pointers and retrievers and things, and your heading dogs and a few others. But what's really important is that you get the right individual and you like it. Very, very important. Keith Cook, if you have limited access to areas to do firearms training, could you work on the rest of the blueprint and bow hunt the dog while slowly bringing on the firearm training? Yep. if you have limited access to areas to do firearms training, could you work on the rest of the blueprint and bow hunt the dog while slowly bringing in the firearm training? Yeah, you could. It might sound funny, but I'd still want that dog to be comfortable around me shooting a bow too. I would do introduction to bow fire, and I'd do it basically to the same extent as I do gunfire training. Either way, I would just make sure that the dog is very, very comfortable around a bow being fired, because a bow still makes a twang and it's unexpected, and it makes a hissing sound, the arrow flying through the air, and it's like a twang and a hiss and a thump, and it's all confusing and what the hell's going on. And one thing you definitely don't want to do is put all this work into training a dog and then going, oh, I don't have to do anything because I'm using a bow, and then go out and have your perfectly trained big game indicating dog locked up on its first deer and shoot a bow whilst breathing down the back of its neck for the first time ever while it's locked up on its first deer. Don't do that. Just make sure that it's not going to give the dog a fright while it's locked up on its first deer. That's all I'm saying. And make sure that there's no excitement surrounding shooting the bow, that you can shoot the bow and the dog stays relaxed. If anything, the dog knows that that's why we've trained stop to the shot. It would be pretty difficult to train stop to the shot with a bow. But you at least want the dog to be steady comfortable and steady with the bow being shot. Otherwise, there's no problem with that at all, Keith. Luke Gordon saying just start the clapper training and do firearms when you can. Luke's had pretty limited time lately for actual gunfire, been heaps of clapper training, and then when I've been able to shoot with them, he's been sweet as, and that's really good advice too. From Luke there, Keith. Heaps of clapper training, man, and just rip into it. Big loud claps, Do your stop to the shot with the clapper, heaps of clapper, and then bit of gunfire when you can, and you should get on top of it all pretty good. Yeah, and Keith said, thanks, Luke. I'd be able to take it to the range and expose it to the noise as a distraction. I could do firearms once a month or so at a farm, and that's probably going to be enough to get your job done. Go real heavy on the clapper, double check your firearm stuff, make sure you've hit all your markers before you start hunting, and you'll be sweet. I'm going to shut it down, guys. Yeah. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks to everyone that's brought the blueprint and followed Big Game Indicating Dogs, or commented, or sent me a cool message, or just, yeah. Thanks all round. I'm really stoked. This Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle is really cool, and it's awesome how you guys are looking after the new people coming in, starting to train. Really good, And there's been a couple of times when I've literally been like, man, and I haven't had time to look at the Inner Circle or answer questions for a few days, and then I've seen a new post, and I've gone, oh no, I'm late answering this, and I read the comments, and there's like 18 comments pretty much saying like what I would have said anyway. It's really cool. And it's all sort of been part of the vision right from the start. I think the blueprint's about 3 years old now, and the whole time I had the vision of making the blueprint, getting it solid, getting a heap of guys following it, getting that real good foundation, and starting the general dog training series, which has ended up being Palmico Dog Training, the Palmico Dog Guide, and now that's taking a heap of our time and work on that, but there's such a solid foundation in Big Game Indicating Dogs, the blueprint, and all of the awesome people that have followed it already, that it's sort of all got it gaining its own momentum, and that's another big part of doing these podcasts and Q&As, and just really trying to stay on top of it and keep all the information and answers there for people coming through, and sort of as more people sign up, we're getting more of a following and more questions, and I'm doing more and more other stuff. It's all that's just going to get more important, so another huge thanks to all the people that put into the podcast fund. Everyone knows who they are, but for the listeners that might not know, it was actually this podcast and starting this and all the gear here, and that was a huge part of starting. That was all through the followers, and we did a Give a Little Fund, and I didn't even think anyone would want to put into it, but everyone did, and within no time we had like over $3,000 raised in donations to get all this gear so we could do live Q&As like this and start a podcast, and it's just all good stuff. If anyone's listening or watching on Facebook or YouTube or listening on the Paul Michael's Revolution podcast and you want to check it out, Big Game Indicating Dogs on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. If you're a .com sort of a person, biggameindicatingdogs.com. Everything's there, the blueprint's there. There's a few articles and videos, whole bunch of information, the trailer for the blueprint explaining a lot of that stuff. And if you want to take that step and actually purchase the blueprint, it's all there as well. If you're listening to this and you're not into hunting, but you're interested in learning more about dog training, we also have Palmico Dog Training and the Palmico Dog Guide. And Palmico Dog Training is basically all the exact same idea, but it's for just anyone that wants to train a pet, and it's sort of been something we've been working towards for a long time too. We've got a lot of work in on that now. The Palmico Dog Guide's got 45 or 50 videos in it, and we're adding a lot more to it. It's very similar to the blueprint with a whole heap more on top. And we also had the Palmico Inner Circle, and we have live Q&As. It's basically just doing the whole thing all over again, but for non-hunters, just for people that want to understand dogs, train dogs better, and just have a good dog. It's got no bad habits, easy to have around, that you have a good relationship with, that stays out of trouble and doesn't get hurt and doesn't get bad habits, and it's all a positive thing with no dramas and issues is kind of what it's all about, really, giving a dog the best life possible. Just want to touch on this. Don't want to be a bloody Debbie Downer right at the end here. But bit of sad news in today. Chris Morris's dog had a big mishap last night. Chris Morris is following the Deer Dog Blueprint with Doug. Doug's a young GSP, and something went wrong last night, and Doug got out of his enclosure and had an altercation with the older dog. Something went wrong last night with little Doug, and he's had a big mishap, and he's hurt, and he's pupped down. And he's in getting x-rays and all that sort of stuff, and so we're sort of thinking about Doug for sure, hoping that he's going to be all right. It was like super stoked, and Chris and his partner were posting all the time, and he's training and how good training's going, and they were posting on Instagram, and it was epic. And then today we're like, oh no, Doug's man down. So we hope he pulls through. We hope it's not as bad as it sort of initially looked. And I don't sort of want to use it as an example or sort of call Chris out or, in a bad time, but it's all just a reminder of be bloody careful, and how important really good kenneling is, and dogs don't get beat up and run over and learn bad habits when they're locked up in a kennel. But no matter how careful you are, every now and again, shitty stuff happens. So, hope Doug's all right. Hope he pulls through. Yeah, sort of waiting to hear news on that, actually. 2 more comments. Yeah, haven't really heard back. But our thoughts are with Doug and Chris and Chris's partner. Apologies, I've forgotten. I can't remember Chris's partner's name off the top of my head. But yeah, they were just amping on it. Like doing heaps of training and just like real good vibes, just posting all the time. And Doug's going really well and just super stoked on it. Like real cool crew. We've got more comments. We've got an update. We've got an update. Is this right? No, this is 2 hours ago. Update on Doug. Hey team, bit of an update on my wee man, i.e. Doug. He's not great, but it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all doom either. Fractured cheekbone, muzzle end, and small fractures near the rear. This is the worst bit bone-wise. They thought his jaw was dislocated, but after a reassessment, it's not, which is great. His wounds have been flushed and drains put in, and there is a little concern over his eye due to swelling, but they can't assess it. Time will tell. The surgeon thinks he's young and he will heal well and fast. He's staying in overnight and may be home tomorrow, depending on how he goes. Feeling so much better knowing we still have him. So it looks like Doug's going to be all right. That's good. And now we're talking about how much is it going to cost to fix him up. And the bearded bushman, who was a massive, follower of the blueprint and everything, straight away, like, how much of a good bastard is this? He was saying, well, if Doug needs massive vet bills, if Chris is in any doubt on whether they can cover that, Jonathan Griff, the bearded bushman, was like, let's do a give a little and raise money to help Doug out, which just shows the sort of community we've got going on with big game indicating dogs. It's really, really cool. But anyway, yeah, so keep us up to date with that, Chris, and yeah, let us know what happens there. If you need a hand with anything, there's sort of people in the there's people in the inner circle and in our crew that are willing to do whatever it takes to help you, man. Do whatever we can. Yeah, I might not have seen Chris's partner's name, but she's Koru Huntress on Instagram, KORU_Huntress. And they're just always, and Chris is Manawatu Hunter, and they're just always hunting. Just going hard. The whole Instagram is just like smiling faces in the bush. It's pretty cool. Sweet as. That's me. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk soon.